How are you today? Thank you for joining me on ThriveCAST. I am with Mr. David Renard, and he's the president and visionary behind RPM Team. He has a background in design, manufacturing, and engineering, and a pretty hefty track record of scaling companies at a lightning speed. So I'm really excited to have him on the show today for a conversation with someone who really knows how to build smarter, who knows how to build faster, and really with purpose. So David, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Shannon, really excited to be here.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your company, RPM Team.
Okay, so RPM stands for Rapid Program Management.
Got it.
And that was kind of like the genesis at the beginning. So program management is a phrase that's used in really large scale projects, but not common in kind of smaller scale projects. You're more
Okay.
used to the phrase project management. And so
Yeah.
program management really kind of includes, I'd say, the full life cycle of a project. So going from like napkin sketch to concept to planning, then into architecture and engineering, then into cost estimation, then into construction. And then at that stage, the same people, my team, that developed the concept and then did the planning and then did the construction documents, then put our owner's reps hats on and then continue to manage the project throughout the punch list, and not just like manage RFIs and submittals,
Right.
but managing client expectations, ensuring change orders aren't coming, making sure everything's on track with agency reviewers and city stakeholders, because we have a lot of projects that are government projects. And so
Right.
stakeholders that are not just the end users, but people controlling the funding, and so all that kind of stuff. So that's where the idea of RPM came from what really is program management. And so that's kind of like the high level overview. But now into the nitty gritty, what we're really doing is architecture, engineering, and project management. And then, of course, we're doing with this RPM style because we do things fast. And we usually get the call when other design teams turn down projects because the timeline is too accelerated. And so from their perspective, too risky. But we've got really good teams and a really good process on how to manage that, how to maybe kind of like reverse engineer. So we're getting the construction documents faster. So we're getting the building department review faster. We're starting the conversations faster, and we're getting more sheets in front of builders so we can see how much it's going to cost. So that's kind of like what we are in a nutshell. But I'm going to keep going just for a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's just all behind the name of it.
Got it. Got it.
We really like to play with pre-engineered and modular and prefab building products. A number of reasons is they help us achieve the lower budgets that we're really going after. When done right, they're way faster. And then also, I noticed that this market is a little bit void of design teams that are modular and pre-engineered building positive, forward thinking for that kind of stuff. Because you really don't get to design that much from scratch. You inherit something and then you really work from it. So that's the I'm going to try to sound really smart here. So like that's those products are our paintbrush that we're painting the canvas with
Yeah.
construction. I butchered that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so prefab construction, whether you love it or you hate it, it's kind of the way that I have understood it. It's the next generation of the future. Like this is what is going to drive this industry forward is this prefab construction. And I mean, you can hate it, but that's where it is, especially in big cities. So do you predominantly do your work in more urban settings then because of this type of construction that you guys are working on? Or is this rural too? Or where do you guys do this at?
It is both.
Okay.
So it really fits. It's hard to just put a really quick answer to that question.
Multi-layered.
Yeah, because it really is driven by the local demographic and the local population's skill sets and resources. So, for example, we'll be working with a Native American tribe with like some home key funds where they need to build like 12 homes or so.
Hmm.
There's one aspect, well, if you convert that to prefab, you can get more homes for the same funding. But then the other side of it is, well, we've got this population here that wants to build, and so we don't want to take that revenue source from them. Then you've got other aspects where the skill sets are really strong. You might have like, let's say, a tribe that wants to start getting into modular themselves, and they do like the approach to modular just because they can build in a controlled setting. I'm dealing a lot with Alaskan natives, so they have
Okay.
seasons to build. They still like modular, but the reason why they like it is because they could build it during winter when they're going to be, hamstrung to actually build it during that season outdoors.
Right.
So that's where it's just like when you ask me that question, I really start to think where like we've done some of the largest pre-engineered building projects in the most rural areas. And then we've done stick built projects in San Francisco.
And that's where you're based, right? Is it out of San Francisco?
Well, our headquarters is in Salinas, California. So that's where a number
Okay.
of our engineers work. And then
Bay Area.
for a little bit. So I'm in San Francisco right
Got it. Got it. It's the other side of the bridge, right?
now.
Yeah, I love Salinas. It's an amazing little city. I think we talked about that before. When you're looking, because those are some like root cause challenges when you're managing kind of all of these multiple stakeholders, like in a construction project. So when you're dealing with a Native American tribe, you're dealing with, the constituents that are on the ground, you're dealing with the government at large, who's essentially helping you pay all of this. What is the biggest challenge when it comes to managing all of these multiple stakeholders to make sure that everybody's heard and at the end of the day, everyone's happy?
It is so tough to answer. So, the first thing to think about is identifying all the stakeholders. So when you think you're talking to your client, sometimes they have a boss that comes up at the end of the project and like, oh, approve this. And I'm just sitting there going like, who are you? But where it's just like you feel like you're in trouble and you did something wrong. You followed the process correctly, but you just I don't want to say you didn't do a good job, but you didn't identify all the stakeholders that could potentially have input that would then potentially create a change at the end. So the one thing that we're still evolving and wanting to get very good at, and that's identifying who are all the players at this table. Like a funny example is we're doing this large navigation center campus, a homeless shelter that has both congregate dormitory style living, tiny home, non-congregate style living, multi-agency center, and then of course services, lots and lots of services.
Yeah.
So we do the design. There's 6 months essentially that this facility has to be open in. I'm exaggerating, I'm condensing it just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I get it.
So we had to source equipment that could be procured in time. So that meant on the mechanical side, we went with a VRF system instead of like a typical, well, a more cost effective RTU system, which we use more traditionally. It's just easier and there's less maintenance. So it makes it through the design approvals, both with the agency, but then also the city client. And then at the end, the maintenance team goes, we can't service this equipment because we have a service contract with a different manufacturer. And right, and you're just like, wow.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
We
Would have
worked
been nice to know this,
we
right?
worked around it. And the funniest part about that is so there's multiple buildings on the site. So for the main crucial buildings for the dormitories, those need to get online. Just like, hey, I'm sorry. These beds need to be available, and we know that the site that they're at right now, they're getting kicked out of. So we have to have it online. So we got our way. Don't mean it like that, but like the VRF system stayed there. So then we converted the design to an RTU system for the services building. The RTU still isn't there yet, and so they're going like, oh no, we're not gonna be able to this building. I'm just looking at them like, I told you. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, and now the thing is too, now they have double the maintenance, right? You still have to secure some sort of contract to be able to maintain, what you were originally gone with. And now they're going to use an existing contract to maintain what they were originally contracted with. But it's like almost it seems like counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like, wouldn't it have just been more streamlined to go with the original and figure out how to navigate that better in order to save money in the long run? I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know.
it is. There's interesting negotiation along the way, which is kind of funny, where it's just like, hey, owner, you're the boss, and
Yeah.
we're going to provide recommendations, and I'll even like keep trying. Even if they say no, 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 I'll go till four no's, and then I'll give up. And
That's a stopping point. I love
it's
that.
their call. And so we went with it. But the negotiation aspect that I kind of mentioned is that, well, guys, that's, you just don't have the rights to service it right now. So time to adapt. You know,
Yeah.
these systems are more efficient. They're better for the use of a dormitory for a number of different reasons. And so that's basically it. It's just like, you don't have the service contract right now. We're not going to be open for a while, so let's just adapt and then, bring this in. Because there are people locally that know how to service these machines. This is not new
Right.
technology, and it's actually used quite a bit.
Yeah.
Climate.
Yeah. It's crazy because in government, government is pretty rigid. And I understand because I worked in government for 15 years. So I was on that side, plus on the other side of the consulting side. And you have these very, very rigid rules with which you have to abide by. And when something comes up and it doesn't really perfectly fit in that rules box, it's like hell breaks loose. And what are you going to do? You can't adapt and you can't move. And what I've learned, especially when I worked in government, is how to get really creative to making sure I did adapt in which way, shape, or form. And however that works is however that works, and still staying within the guidelines. So there's always a possibility of making sure that you're going to be able to get to the end line. It's just about how you go about getting there that becomes the biggest challenge, right? So I get that.
And there's so many different ideas, and like how you get there, and at your original question of how do you manage
Biggest challenge. Yeah.
all these different stakeholders, our job is really communications experts through the projects. I mean, there's so many different fun things we can say, personality managers, like communications experts, where it's just kind of learn how people communicate in your project and then adapt to that, just so you can ensure that everyone's understanding what's happening versus just reading our meeting minutes and action items. So, at the very beginning, we're putting a flow chart together that has that stakeholder input. So we'll go through all the different groups. So let's say at the high up city level, they care about budget. At the
Of course.
bottom end user level, they care about functionality, maintenance. And from a homeless shelter perspective, they're looking at also like dignity too. Like we're not going
Right.
to create this institutional, cold, hard walled facility that nobody wants to go to. We want to make it attractive and inviting,
Yeah.
where it kind of becomes this beacon of hope for them. And then in the middle, you've got all these other priorities and requirements of, how fast things are going to happen, what's our timeline to open. And so what we're going through is we're looking at what are the priorities, right? What do they really want? What are their requirements? What's what they really need? And then like, what are your expectations? How are we going to execute this to get this right? And so from that, we create these lists with everything I just said. So you kind of have like these different, like 3 sections. Then we compile it all together, and then we send it to all the other people that did not create that list. We get the end users list, and we send it to like the city high up stakeholders, and then we allow them to redline. Then we kind of take
Right.
all that information back and we synthesize it. Sorry, I look like I was.
Okay.
So we synthesize and go, hey guys, this from all of you guys' input and how you're ranking your priorities. This is kind of the master list, the flow chart that we've come up with, which are the most important things about this project that we're going to tackle first, and then move that way. And so we're doing a lot of what you might expect a government to be doing on these sorts of projects. And I didn't do this 4 years ago because I expected the owner and the stakeholders to be doing this. But one thing I recognize is there's a lot of cities where they're so compartmentalized, and it's not
Hmm.
against them. They have so much on their plate that they can't, do all this kind of cross-agency coordination.
Yeah.
And so we recognize that with building departments, where some are notorious for one reviewer not talking to another reviewer. And so I remember talking to my dad, and I was like, I really find myself kind of being like a building department lobbyist, where I'm like you got to talk to you, and we got to make sure we're coming in the same way because some of these review comments are conflicting, and it's just slowing us down because we got to see what's your priority and making sure things are correct and compliant.
Right.
In that regard, we've now taken upon ourselves to be that communication intermediary between everybody, and things have gotten way more efficient. And what allows it for us is we know everything now about the project, and I love that because a lot of stress can just be rooted down into like you're uneasy about what you don't know, so that we
Yeah.
can identify and get in people's worlds and in their faces to get either the truth or what might be going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. For example, like local communities and neighborhoods like not being a fan of the project, then
Yeah.
be more sensitive when we're talking to those groups if we weren't previously brought in the loop on that kind of stuff. So there's just so many different things to talk about with just like the stakeholder aspect.
There's a sense of inclusivity that's really important, especially when you're putting together these government funded contracts that, everybody kind of has a say, and whether your opinion is recognized or not, at least you have the opportunity to express your opinion, and then it can be taken into consideration for the long-term benefit of the project. But it's really hard, like you said, to kind of get all of those stakeholders in one room to agree upon, or even just to collaborate with all of the mixed messages that you have, right? So I bet your job is like putting the puzzle together and making sure that this puzzle is succinctly connected, that all of these parts are going to fit together to create this project. And that's really difficult. That's like you said, it's project management, but on a much like faster, higher level, which I think is really impressive. So question for you. When you are doing this, I mean, are you working with cities across the entire country doing this? Or are you only really centralized in California? Or where are your projects located?
All across the country.
Okay. So
We
you're
even have a project
nationwide.
in Canada as well. Yeah,
Okay.
and even across the country, we've had the benefit of like I think working with almost all degrees or levels of government. So we have city clients and county clients and state clients.
So with that, city, county, or yeah, city, county, state, how do you manage like that hierarchy when there's essentially too many cooks in the kitchen? I mean, how do you manage that? And how do you keep them all happy? Is it all just using the checklist, the punch list that you have? Like
It's
things can
it's
get heated in these situations.
surprisingly not.
Really?
Really
Oh,
surprisingly not. So
oh my gosh.
so on the city side, they know the hierarchy, and that's one aspect of our government
Yeah,
level.
layout.
Say
Yeah.
layout. Thanks. They know who they answer to, and so
Yeah.
we toe the line too. Like I mean, so there's funny stuff where we one project unfortunately was estimated by the general contractor at the end, and at least their estimate had the project over budget, so we had to value engineer a lot of stuff. And so
Mm,
my architect is not a fan of that, right?
yeah.
He doesn't want to value engineer essentially dignity out of a homeless shelter project. And I love where his heart's at, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm like our role is for my firm is 100%. I watch the client's back, but allow our team to have a little bit more flexibility so they can kind of come up with really cool ideas. So I'm
Mhm.
sitting here just like kind of smiling. I'm not really being too quiet. And then so one of the city employees goes like to our architect. He's like, I love where your heart's at, but we don't have the money and we've got to like take away these little things. And then my architect's like, it's how much more is it going to cost? $800, $1,000. So I'll pay for it. But then the city employee he goes, well, this is coming down from, said client, like the head of Health and Human Services. And architects like,
Mm,
oh, didn't know that. Okay. On those projects, there really is no confusion as to
yeah.
whose final word it is. And what I really love about it is like there is no challenging it. Uh, And we all respect it because we really respect that person because they share our vision. Like we've got a certain vision when it comes to these projects. And I love when you have these off the record chats, like on a site walk or something, and there's really nothing else to talk. So you talk about life and you kind of talk about healing and, what it means for certain people and the different levels that they have to go through to just be, be a successful person. And then when you find out that like, oh, our mission, our vision to this approach is aligned. And it doesn't happen instantly at the project. I mean, yeah, maybe they
Right.
and us, and maybe I'm just kind of like a slow learner and they're human, not their city or business personality. But when that happens, I'm just like, there's some level of a divine intervention for the projects that land on our plate, for that we take on, and it's really fun to see. So there is no confusion or even challenging against that hierarchy of these sorts of projects.
So, speaking of that, because I mean, sometimes projects can get side railed and can go sideways for whatever reason. If that were to happen, like, what's your approach to contingency planning if you're over budget or you're over timeline? Is there a contingency because these are so heavily rooted in the government system?
Great question. So the contingency planning is interesting because there are hard dates.
Yeah.
It's like by February 28th, we're moving in no matter what. And so,
No
uh,
pressure. No pressure.
like, so there's a lot that the city itself will take on in ensuring that the inspectors on site are being responsive, ensuring that like there's a really clear list for the TCO items that will happen. And then, the only kind of like thing where like I'm pushing back is if I don't see a good contingency plan coming out of the general contractor, I am 100% vocal about it.
Got it.
I'm not really liked by the general contractor throughout at the end of the project, they're like, we actually did really like all your, calls and emails and texts to make sure that this happened, you little annoying wart. And I'm like, I'm really glad. I'm sorry I annoyed you guys throughout, but like that's just what we have to do because it is a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it
If
is.
we're not moving like, at this certain time. So the contingency planning is it's about, hey, if a utility provider is not being responsive to get the sewer tapped in, or the electrical company isn't being responsive to energize the site or schedule these different inspections, we have a plan in place to use our political firepower to make a big stink because they're not connected. I mean, especially with
Yeah.
electrical. Underground utilities like water and sewer, okay, it is. But usually electrical, it's not. So you use
Mhm.
that political firepower. But then more the contingency side is, for example, like we have a date for the electrical energization. Well, let's just say something happens. So the contingency is running everything on temporary power. And then from there, you identify, okay, do we have generators available? Do we have the size available? Are we navigating to see what sort of temporary power permits would be required? So you think all that stuff ahead. Now,
Mhm.
you also kind of go like on the sewer and water side. Okay, so if we can't get water or we don't pass all the different inspections from like the bacteria stuff and making sure the pipes are clean before we turn it all on, can we set up a tank and have a tank there on site? And then what does that process look like? And then, for sewer, if we don't have bathrooms, do we have shower and bathroom trailers available from inventory? So a lot of the contingency is more just like on temporary facility side, which I have a really great network for. So I'd say like your contingency planning is really it's going to be more successful when you have a really good network of backup plan.
Yeah. On the fly, like I need your help. How quickly can you get here to get this done? So with your contingency plan, are there always earmarked contingency funds to be able to support this so you don't go over budget?
So
Like when you build a house, you have a contingency, right?
that's a good delineator. So, I was more talking about contingency for timelines rather than contingencies for budget. So
Okay.
for contingencies for budget, great question. And I would say what we have done is, if it's in the budget, we want to build out the interiors with really nice finished materials. But there are really cost effective and fast prefab wall products that can line up everything, can be delivered in site in like a week, and are, I almost want to say dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And then so basically, if there is something going over the budget, the city's got, a hard job to kind of look at themselves in the mirror and go, do we want to ask for more funding? Do we want to take it out of our general fund? Or do we want to maybe go with this lesser quality product that still kind of keeps the project moving and keeps the general basis of design intact? And so that's really, you just kind of do this cost analysis and you review the materials and just see, is there going to be any sort of impact later down the road for maintenance? And is this really just a band-aid that's going to become a bigger issue in the future? Now that's like on the city side. Now like contingencies on the, call it like the private sector, is really kind of like a big topic of mine, where when we're doing the full design and we're not just working with like an architect complementing them with structural engineering or
Mhm.
MEP or civil, or there's a structural engineering firm that we're complementing them with architectural. So I want to be, clear that like there's projects where we're just helping fill in a gap. And there's other projects that we're program managing. Okay, well, I'm glad I
Got
had a
it.
really good definition at the beginning. And so when we're program managing, we really love to develop what that turnkey estimate looks like at the beginning so that the owner is not going into a design contract with us blind. Um,
Yeah.
been in that space before. I hate it. Whether they spend all this money, you design exactly what they want, then it's 50% over budget. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, now you got to charge more to get back to the original budget, which is not fun. Nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
And then you already got sold on this like cool dream, and then you got to like see your dreams slowly
Squashed.
cascading. I
Yeah.
know. And so those budgets help us keep on track for a number of reasons. So if like the owner goes, hey, what do we add this? What do we add that? Well, let me remind you, this is what this first estimate looks like. So if we go that, we're going to go over. So now they have either the buy-in and ownership. I'm willing to accept that and I'll go over, or they have that coaching. No, let's stay here and stay in our lane for the budget that we've already established. So that's in a perfect world. Then, post COVID and whatever happens in this crazy world, budgets can change.
Yeah.
So it's the contingency plan right now. There's no formula. It that I have. It's just like, all right, it's a case by case basis. Let's see where it's deficient. What's the one thing that's really raising the cost higher? Is it the people we're getting numbers from? Do we need a backup? And so there's a number of different things. And once again, I'd say that the best answer is just having a large and healthy network. So just because one group or firm is saying something's going to cost this much doesn't mean that that's always equitable across, other maybe smaller, more nimble firms.
Yeah.
Or we've got a really good job of like, it's, hey, we're in the age of entrepreneur and startups.
Hmm.
So people want to try or get a new product out there, they will discount it for those early adopters. And as an engineering firm that is like, hey, we're this new building new building tech positive, we have a lot of people coming to us to help develop their products. So we're able to kind of plug those in at
Oh,
budgets.
oh,
Which
I
is
love that.
fun to do.
Talk about the innovation. You get to like you basically test that innovation before it's even out to the bigger marketplace. I love that. Like just test it and try to break it and see what works and see what doesn't. I love that. That's amazing.
And I'm always surprised, when these new ones come on our radar, we have come to accept a certain price for a certain product, and then something new
Hmm.
comes in, and it's 70% less, and we're developing it. We're looking at the finishes and the durability, and then we're looking at their factory process, right, and how the assembly line works, and what volume discount they have with the materials that they're purchasing all in large orders, and we're just like, oh my gosh, like this thing we've accepted at 140,000, we can now get for like 90,000. And we're not buying it
Like,
ourselves.
woo!
We're putting the client direct in contract with these guys, with these groups. So we're able to
Yeah.
just kind of keep going lower because labor keeps going up. So
Yeah.
our whole thing is we're trying to convert as much labor as we can to something that is manufactured off site, which is really just a purchase.
Yeah.
And so that's how we're trying to keep how we're successful in keeping a lot of these project budgets lower than market or industry standard.
So how many people are on your team that do?
There are 20 of us now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a pretty good sized team. And is everybody, so you have engineers, you have project managers. You don't call them project managers. What do you call them?
I was trying to be cute and call them program managers, but
Program managers.
everyone's just like, huh? I'm like, okay, it's a project manager. We're project
So,
managers. It's basically project managers, engineers, and architects, and then
got
we
it.
have a handful of like just administrative people, some marketing folks, and
Got it.
my parents too that help.
Of course, and your parents, yeah, because this is a family-run company, which I also love. So, what do you think is the number one misconception about like owners reps? Because you kind of are an owner's rep in a way. And what do you think the biggest misconception is? Because I mean, you said it earlier where you're almost like a lobbyist, right? Like you're advocating for them. Like some people think that's icky, but it is what.
Well, I mean, the first answer is like the misconception is that they're jerks, and
Yeah, but they're not, right? I mean, they're just trying to be.
like so. I my first projects at RPM were driven by owners reps, and so I got this really good early mentorship out of pure annoyance and hatred. I'm just like, it's 30 a.m. and I got two missed calls. And then so I was like, wow, that's really what it takes. So, like I would say I'm on the top end of the generation that will hide behind email. And I had a couple of clients who were just like, you're the only person that I think about your age group that will call. And I'm like, are you serious? Was everyone hiding behind email these days? I was like, no one reads emails. And then everyone thinks it's socially acceptable just to like one email, 24-hour turnaround. And it's like, no, email, call, and then text. Make sure they understand what the action item is, and then when I expect to see that answer. But the one thing that I learned about owners reps, getting over that misconception is it was crazy to see. And I know I'm kind of like going all over the place and explaining this, but at first I was watching these owners reps who are managing the whole project, right? They're the project expert, but they're asking questions. So I was kind of like, I don't know if you should be asking that question. But they did it unabashedly and without any shame. And so that's what taught me. It's like, it's okay not to know everything, but it's your job to figure it out and figure out what you don't know. And the more questions that you can ask, the more you reveal to everyone that these questions do exist. And once we have the answers, we can kind of write them down and put a list together to track them. That's
And
when
you're more informed, right? You're more
you
informed at the end of the day.
can identify what you don't know. And part of risk mitigation is eliminating assumptions and putting those assumptions into either like fact or truth or just like know-how. And so that's when I really felt like I came out of my shell, where I was just like, hey, I don't know all this sort of stuff. And you'd expect people to be like, okay, amateur. But everyone's just like, oh no, it's a really good point. We have not actually thought about I was gonna make a joke, the trash company and how they want to pick up the trash. And you're like, it's crazy that we got to interface with them on something like
I mean, it's just that's general common knowledge, right? Like I get it. I get it. So, what can you walk us through? Do you have anything off the top of your head? And you might not, but can you walk us through a time when you saw really an owner's rep make a really massive positive difference in the project success? Or is that par for the course? Does that happen on every project? Or is it few and far between?
I think it happens on every project. I think any project that has an owner's rep is infinitely more successful.
More successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Because like, each discipline has their own project manager, but they're really managing in a silo and in a vacuum. And I know it's not fair to say, but they're managing their workflow and their scope that they're contracted for. And then you have the general contractor, and their project managers are managing their scope too.
Right.
And so the owner's rep then is that overarching umbrella that
Kind of bringing everybody.
whose scope is whose, it needs to get done. So like if you like look at it from like an owner's perspective, you've got owners that have never built or designed anything.
Right.
Then you've got owners that have, and it's just like like the big Googles and those large companies, they have their own real estate and capital projects divisions where they have builders and designers in house.
Right.
Still the owner right? And so they still need that other person that's going to have their back, that is really in the face of everyone designing and building it.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's just like it's that extra layer of protection and communication that will synthesize everything that's going on in the field back to the owner. So the owner is in the know and they can report to their stakeholders as everything's going on in the project. But there is this a little sense of relief that the owner's rep is taking care of a lot of like this different check-in information to make sure that the project's staying on track. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I mean, really, at the end of the day, any owner shouldn't try to manage a project solo simply because of what you're saying. Like, it's like you're a layer of protection for them, right? And making sure that their best interests are always taken care of. Do you have owners that like try to manage the project solo? Ooh, that would be scary. Really? No, don't do that. Don't do that. You don't do that.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Uh,
But so, with everything that we've talked about, we're talking about like some of the larger like city projects, and
right.
we are still doing residential uh, construction. We're still doing ADUs and backyards and
Yeah.
remodels and wall demolitions and additions for single family homes. And so sometimes those clients will come through the builder
Yeah.
on behalf of the owner, but we get contacted directly by the owner that's never built. And this is their first home. Sorry, the first home that they purchased, right? So this is the single biggest
Yeah.
that they've ever made. It's a baby. And when they're managing that themselves, and we kind of recognize that early on, we're sharing our process with them. I think we've got a really cool proprietary internal process of how we communicate with clients and how we keep them informed throughout the project and everything that's going on. And,
Okay.
I noticed like a year ago, it was the funniest thing where people would sign the contracts and then go through the process, and they'd ask this question, but like, I was like, did you not read the contract that you signed with us? It says right there, but you don't want to. You can't say that. You want to be gentle and friendly and positive. Like you don't want to be. And so what we kind of realized is like it's a $3,000 structural engineering contract. Okay. But it's touching the bones of their $1 million house. And so like, we started to like look at like what's the rest what is the one thing that you buy that comes with so much paperwork? It's buying a car. And
Yeah. A car, a home.
yeah, and then what happens when you're buying that car, like you sit down, you have to go through a 2-hour process, to get through all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, let's adopt
Yeah.
and let's adopt it in the way where we're not only actually walking them through step by step what our contract says, but educating them about how this industry works from design to construction because they've never been in it before. And we have so much experience in it. Like, we're more than happy to educate them to the point where it's just like, this is how we work, but we also want you to understand how everyone else works and what red flags to look for. So if you end up not going with us, you at least got a good half hour solid understanding of what you're going to embark on in this industry of changing your home up or adding to it. And what's like the positive side effect that grew out of all this is the amount of like relationship building happened because of it, and like the trust.
Yeah.
And so like I want to trust the people that are in my home work
Right.
on it. And so it's been really great. So you kind of bring in that whole thing where it's like, okay, owner's rep is, communicator, and then residential design, you are an educator.
Yeah.
And so that's been a really fun new process for us that has just paid dividends, and having these like really great like client partnerships throughout the projects where they're like valuing our input, and we're allowing them to be like, hey, like, you can blow out this whole wall, you can. We're gonna have to get some footings underneath. It's gonna be a little expensive. Can you live with a 5 foot opening? Because it's gonna be thousands of dollars cheaper. They're like, okay, we like that.
Where do you guys predominantly spend most of your time? Is it in the single family homes or is it in the more the commercial side of things? Or are you guys evenly split between those two?
It is somehow evenly split.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great to hear. Because most people either focus kind of on one or the other. It doesn't seem to be evenly split. So that's really cool to hear. I guess it's just because of how you guys are presenting the bill. or what, why, how did you guys land that it's evenly split like that? Because you're bidding on government contracts too. I mean, I guess what is more lucrative for you? Either or?
Great question. So I don't really concern myself too much about what's more lucrative than the other thing. With this, you've got your own family in house that you want to ensure are fed, and then you've got the outside world that you want to ensure are being served. And
Right.
so because of that, we really have like division heads. So within RPM, my division is housing and homeless and navigation centers and government projects. Then we have another division head that focuses on
Got it.
residential.
Got it.
Got
Got
a
it.
division head that focuses on modular construction.
Okay, okay.
Therefore, we can each have our own expertise in these divisions. And then we have, the army of architects and engineers that will fulfill those different project requirements. This group that we've built and developed have a working relationship with each other for like 9 years. So
Yeah.
even though our firm officially didn't start until 2020, these are all people that like I've collected in my little treasure box of like this is an architect I really 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 liked. He really understood this building that a lot of people kind of like don't want to utilize because they don't really get to design a lot themselves.
Mhm.
And then that also goes with like engineers as well. And so these are all folks that we've either worked with or I've met on projects, worked with in past firms, and then now we're all together as like one family. And so because of that and all that history that we have, it is such like a fun, friendly, and we're all friends.
Yeah.
But then again, with friends, you can speak more candidly to each other. So we get
Sure.
through arguments way faster.
So, I mean, this is a relationship business and everybody knows that, right? Like the relationships that you bond here is really kind of your benefactor of success in the industry itself. But with that said, I mean, how is this how you guys get all of your clients? Is kind of through word of mouth, through referrals, through, collaborations with others, or how else do you guys find your clients? Are
Great question. So word of mouth has gone super far.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so like
Yeah.
the reason is because we know how word of mouth works, and so we want to be perfect, and we're working with like making sure people are happy with us. When we
Mhm.
feel people aren't happy with us, we feel like we're behind. Even if like everything's also on target. Maybe he didn't like a joke I made on a call or something. Okay, now I'm behind on the project. So we really do want to work to impress. And we are on the younger side. So because of that, we have our age working against us. So we have to be perfect.
Yeah.
That actually goes a long way. Like there are manufacturers that go tell other manufacturers, they're like, well, they got back to us same day. They got the revised submittal back to us within 48 or 72 hours. And they did it without complaining. Like, if like, let's say someone wants a change or a revision, you're naturally kind of wanting to go, I just finished. Like, you want to do something else?
No change orders.
It's like we welcome the challenge. I mean, as engineers, they are problem solvers. And so if someone brings us a problem, we are passionate and excited to solve it for them. So that really goes for word of mouth. Now that's just like one thing. That's helped us grow a lot.
Yeah.
And otherwise, we love marketing. My mom comes from marketing, so does my dad. I love telling stories, and so I'm quite involved as well. And I've got some of my really really smart friends under our employ that we just love sharing the stories and all the fun nuances of the success of a specific project.
Well, to tell that story, like what you were talking about, is you're putting all these nuances together to kind of tell that compelling story from a marketing perspective that really makes it personal and helps your potential customer resonate or empathize or understand what it is that you are going through, right? So it's that emotional connection that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it does not matter. But from a marketing perspective, if you can find what that emotional connection is with your end user or with your customer, you're going to have a customer for life. And that is the loyalty that it brings. So bravo to you guys if you're using stories to be able
I love that
to
you said
tell.
that because thank you, because it's like there's something else that I neglected to bring in. So we are championing our clients. So if
Yeah.
with us, I'm setting up news alerts, and anything I ever hear about you in the future, I'm just going like, oh my gosh, I saw this. This is so great. We're invested in the long-term success of that project. And then so I would say a lot of people gravitate towards that for more like lifetime friendships,
Yeah.
projects done. Now on the marketing side, we just marketing. What does that really mean? So we're doing a lot of videos on LinkedIn, and
Mm.
there people are like watching them and then calling us going like, I didn't know you could do this. I've got a project like this that I need some help on. And then like so the funny thing is like I'm not expecting that from the videos. I'm doing it because I like them and they're fun.
Go figure, right?
And it's just, and then also, hey, we want to stay current and we don't want people to forget about us. So the fun videos are like reminders, but then people are learning stuff from them that we're doing and developing and introducing to this industry, from marrying two different pre-engineered building manufacturers to a modular manufacturer all in one site.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun to do because those two manufacturers don't talk to each other. They're like, we're
Yeah,
we're we're that glue that gets to put it together and then tell that story.
that's a really cool concept to embrace. That I think is what your true key differentiator is because not a lot of AEC firms do that. And so I think it really makes what your business stands for quite different in the market space. So speaking of that, I mean, what is like the most recent project that you've done that you just are so hyped on, that you are so happy about, that we should really look at and say, wow, okay, this is what our PM team is all about? Do you have a favorite project?
Gosh. Well, when you put it that way, where it's just like this is what they're all about, that's tough. Okay, so I would have two answers. As you as you were telling me about that, there was we did this tiny home village for the state of Utah.
Oh,
It first started off as kind of like this large site that had a multi-agency center, navigation building in the center, and then we were more like long term kind of developing it. And then they came back and they said like, we have to scrap the plan. We can only build half of it. We're only going to be using this site for like 2 years, and we just found out that we're getting kicked out of our other site. And so you need to put this whole plan together in a month. And so that was
no
what
pressure.
we were up against. And so we completed the design. We got lots of really great kudos out of it. But in the design process, they're simple tiny home units, right? It's like an 8 by 20 unit. Our architect laid them out on the site in such a way that it's not what you would expect. You would expect like tiny home village, just rows and rows and rows.
Hmm.
Oh, there's pathways and stuff. And then like we changed the site lighting from overhead lighting to lighted bollards because it's less institutional. It's less internment campy. I hate to say that. And we didn't tell anyone, why we did this. So we just plugged that into the design. Now let's pay attention. We didn't tell anybody why it curved walkways and this kind of like flow of the houses. So I was there on the punch list walk, and residents were moving in, and they had been there for about like a week because once again they had to open, and they found out that I was on the design team, and they all came up to me, and they're like, "This place feels like an apartment complex. We love it." They're like, just like the walkways feel like we're going through a path to our home. And I'm just sitting here going like, I love that you picked up this stuff that we were, I won't say hiding, but we were putting in because we felt like subconsciously you're gonna pick it up. But no, it was conscious, and they're like, this is so much better than the previous site, and it feels like home. That's what we're all about.
You're like, score, we did it. Yeah, that's very fulfilling. It has to be very fulfilling, especially for a community like that who's focusing on tiny homes. Like that's really cool. That's such a good story.
Cool. Well, then that's the best one, so I can keep there.
Well, is there anything else that you want to share about our PM team that you want the world to know about? Kind of like your parting thoughts.
My
Anything that's really important that we really should really know besides your website address?
the one thing that really kind of like struck me early in my career that I really didn't know how we were different than others is working with joy and really just wanting to be like positive reinforcements in society and community and neighborhoods. There's with what we work, the population that we work with, they've got so much trauma in their lives. We see that. And so, I look at the world as a very painful place. It
Yeah.
sucks. Um,
Yeah. The underserved is hard to serve, and you can find an ounce of happiness or an ounce of glee from satisfying someone's imminent need. There's a tremendous amount of satisfaction there. For me, that's what working in government was that we were kind of like the silent folks that we were really making a difference in people's lives, but we weren't touting that we were making a difference in people's lives, but we were creating happiness somewhere. And I think that's so important for everybody. So I love that you stand by that.
and it's not just for the housing projects. I mean, that's where I was surprised when a city official, called me after the project and they're like, I'm sad the project's over because I don't get to hear your voice on these calls all.
Aw.
And I was like, voice is so high and squeaky and everybody makes fun of me for it. But they're just like, no, when we heard your voice, we knew that there was like someone that was passionate about the project and was like excited to be here. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like, well, maybe it's because I just started my own firm, so I am passionate about everything. But then I kind of realized like there's a lot of joy that's lost in just the general day-to-day mundane aspects of like project management. And so it's not just like the housing that we're injecting joy into, but it's like all of our projects. And so it's just kind of reminding people where it's just like, it takes the same amount of energy to be grumpy as it does to be excited and fun and happy-go-lucky and try to make people smile and joke. And it's if you've got that ability to turn that on, then turn it on for everybody and just kind of share it. And that's what our whole team's all about. Like it's just like the sweetest groups of people that are easy to work with. We remove ego and we're like passionate about jumping in and solving these problems and doing it fast.
Yeah, I love that. David Renard from our PM team, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. I love your story. And where can people find more information on your website? What's your website?
The website is RPM.
And you guys are on LinkedIn, you said, and any of the social platforms that we should be following you guys on?
We've got a channel on YouTube and
Great.
then of course LinkedIn. We really like our communication platform to the world is LinkedIn. So like we do a new project, we post there. We find an article about like other groups that build fast and stuff or disaster recovery. We highlight it there. We kind of want to be that like the social media presenter of fast stuff and stuff where people kind of come together to build fast, whether it's being donated or like volunteer work. And so that's really it. Those are just our two platforms.
Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I can't wait to see what you guys are building in the future. I know you guys are going to have a lot of great things moving forward. So, bravo to you.
Well, thank you, Shannon. That really means a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.